It's Monday, and that so happens to be the day that I like to talk about monsters. Hello, and welcome to Monster Mondays. I am Geoff Arbuckle, co-host of the podcast Film Seizure, that you can catch each Wednesday morning here at filmseizure.com or at a number of podcast providers online. It's time to get back to the Ultra Q series. Now, this is the series that was the precursor to the hugely successful and popular Ultraman series that started coming pretty much fast and furious for the next 55 years with barely a break. Ultraman is so popular, the big guy is now a co-star in a 4-issue miniseries starting next month alongside Marvel's Avengers. But it all began with Ultra Q, and I've already looked at 8 episodes of the series. One of the many things I like about the series is that I really like the recurring cast of our 3 main characters. I like the ominous and mysterious monologues that open and close episodes. I like how great the series looks in black and white, adding extra flavor to spooky vibes at times. But here we are. We have arrived at episode 9, and we're going to do the same thing I did last week with the 3 episodes of Tales from the Dark Side. I'll talk about episode 9, Baron Spider, give the single thing that I like about the episode, move on to episode 10, The Underground Super Express Goes West, and give my like for that episode, and then wrap things up with episode 11, Balloonga, where I'll talk about my favorite thing in that episode. 3 episodes to cover, and 3 likes is the par for the course on this show. So each episode gets a single like I did before with last week's episode. And then I will talk about an episode, give my single like, move on to the next episode, and so on. So let's go. In Baron Spider, episode number 9, 2 lighthouse workers get a call from the Coast Guard saying that the light from the lighthouse was odd and something was wrong with it. Upon investigation, one of the workers is attacked and killed by a giant tarantula. Hearing the first guy scream, this leads the other character to check on his coworker and sees the spider and runs away terrified. Now, the name of the episode is not the name of the monster itself. The monster is just simply identified as tarantulas. Baron Spider is the name of a rich guy who became obsessed with the 8-legged nasties and collected them and has in his mansion there, which is near the lighthouse, near this coast. He earned the nickname Baron Spider from his appreciation of the arachnids. Meanwhile, June, Yuriko, and Ippei, and 3 of their friends are driving on a foggy night. And as they look for some place to stay, Ippei and another of the group, Takahara, fall into a swamp near a mansion. And they seek refuge in the mansion because the swamp was freezing cold and the 2 goofballs who fell into it are in desperate need of warmth. Inside the mansion is June, who regales the group of the tale of Baron Spider. He says this place reminds him of that story. It's not exactly pointed out directly and for certain that this was Baron Spider's mansion, but of course, by the end of the episode, it has to be, basically. But it was the 1870s when Baron Spider built his collection. On the day of the Baron's only daughter's wedding, she was accidentally bitten by his prized venomous tarantula that he imported from Europe. In a fit of fear, she ran off into the marsh, fell into the swamp, and was never seen again. Except, legend has it that after the Baron went crazy with grief, it's said that the daughter returned after turning into a spider herself, and she and her father lived together in secret until the Baron died. And as the group investigates the mansion, they are unaware that they are being watched, and that is until June sees a giant tarantula staring at him from the ceiling above the bed he's resting in. He tries to tell the others about what he saw, but they don't believe him. Things take a turn when it turns out that there is a giant spider upstairs and a second one downstairs in the cellar. The other two members of the Friends, Hayama and Kyoko, are attacked by the spiders, but June is able to kill one of the spiders attempting to feed on the ailing Takahara by stabbing it in the abdomen. The six friends escape the mansion, followed closely by the second spider, and when they get to the cars, June runs over the remaining spider, killing it. With both spiders dead, the mansion suddenly catches fire and crumbles into the swamp, leaving no trace of its existence, proving that the two spiders are very likely the Baron and his daughter, having turned into those giant spiders and more or less feeding on humans and kind of keeping the place guarded. Now, for my first like for this episode and my favorite thing about the Baron Spider episode itself, there's so many things I could go into with this episode. In my opinion, this is one of the best episodes I've seen so far of Ultra Q, but I could talk about the cool marionette style spider monsters. These aren't giant spiders like Kumanga in the Godzilla series. This is a spider about the size of, I don't know, like a lion or a tiger or something. Yeah, that's big for sure. Scary if you saw something like that, definitely. But not as big as the gigantic monsters of the Godzilla series. I could talk about how I really like that we see our main heroes, Jun, Yuriko, and Ippei, not seen, they're seen not directly seeking monsters this time, but they're hanging out with another trio of friends, with basically the same makeup of that group that we've been following throughout the series with our main trio. But what I really like about this series is the mood of the episode. Not only does it have the giant scary spiders, it also has the old dark house kind of concept throughout, kind of as far as its style of tale that it's telling this time. They find the Baron's actual mansion, and Jun knows the tale of the Baron and his affection for spiders and the tragic tale of his daughter. So it's a perfect story to tell with the backdrop of this abandoned mansion on a foggy night. It would seem as though this was part giant icky spider scary episode, part haunted house or Halloween worthy tale, and part cautionary tale, as our narrator also tells us at the end that the feared night spider, who was once human, only attacks people in its desire to be a human again. So if you see a spider crawling around, leave it be, for it may just be an unfortunate soul trapped inside the body of the spider, yearning to be human again. Everything about the way that it uses all of that as its kind of method of delivery for this monster or for this kind of weirdo supernatural tale, how it uses the kind of the eeriness of the location of the mansion, all of that stuff. I just dug the hell out of that. Again, one of the better episodes I've seen of this series, maybe the best in a series full of really cool and fun episodes. Now let's talk about the Underground Super Express Goes West. The episode starts with Yuriko and Ippei boarding the brand new futuristic bullet train named the Inazuma, which travels 450 kilometers per hour, which translates to about 280 miles per hour. That's pretty fast. But because Ippei is a goof, he mistakes a different piece of luggage than what he actually brought along with him. And inside that case that he brought is the artificial life form M1, created by a Dr. Akawa. Jun learns that M1 is fairly unstable from the good doctor, and it can grow exceptionally fast if not kept in an extremely highly pressurized container. The employees of the train were able to locate Ippei and get the case, but before transporting it to a safe locker, a photographer snaps a picture of the contents inside. The flash creates a reaction, and the amorphous blob that is M1 is changed. While the rest of the train is enjoying their super fast travel, M1 goes from blob form to a gorilla-like creature. Once alone in the engine room, M1 begins messing about with the controls and causes the train to go faster than its safe top speed of 450 kilometers per hour. The conductor of the train separates the engine car from the rest of the train. However, they are not out of trouble yet. There is a young stowaway in the engine car with M1. So the engine is speeding out of control, and there's a new monster in the car, and there's a mischievous young boy in the out of control car with the monster. The kid hides in a storage locker while M1 rides the top of the car as it barrels into a bulldozer and a couple of buildings, causing everything to more or less explode. But both M1 and the storage locker are launched into orbit thanks to the momentum of the train. The kid opens the locker's vault to gaze in awe at the stars in outer space as M1 tells the kid that he is a seagull. And that's how it ends. For my second like and the favorite thing about the 10th episode of the series, I don't even know where to begin with this. This episode is very weird. You have a glob creature that evolves exceptionally quickly into a monkey monster. There's a shoeshine boy who is rather mischievous, who sneaks on board the super train just so that he can feel like he's important, that he was on the maiden voyage of this thing. And he ends up getting trapped with the monkey monster, and they both get shot into space, presumably never to be seen again. Then the monster tells the boy he is a seagull. I have no idea what's going on in this episode. After Baron Spider being spooky and eerie, this one is straight up a farce. From beginning to end, it's treated like a comedic episode. And I guess the thing that I like the most is that M1's creator says that he can create an M2 and an M3, but he can't create a new boy if that young stowaway dies. But then that kid gets launched into space from the train, hurtling into a bulldozer and buildings. It's kind of amazing that anything in this episode happens, and that's, definitely worthy of the appreciation. I mean, all of the crazy stuff that goes on. Any one of those things can get appreciation after that spooky, scary episode of Baron Spider. But launching the playful monster and the mischievous kid into space to resolve the trouble of this episode was definitely not on my list of ways to resolve the trouble of this episode. So I'm going to give it I'm going to give my like to the idea that Ultra Q didn't just launch a monster into space. It launched a little boy into space too. And we're never told if that boy was ever saved. Amazing. But finally, let's discuss the episode Balloonga. Now, an astronaut is returning from an exploratory mission to Saturn, which is just something that has all sorts of other implications when it comes to this series and to Ultraman later, but whatever. And he's just about to pilot his way back down onto Earth with his thrusters when something attaches itself to the spaceship and sucks its fuel and power from it, causing the ship and the astronaut to crash into the sea. A week later, June and Yuriko are flying over the crash site, and they spot a red balloon that June assumes marks the site of the tragedy. But soon the plane itself is also out of fuel too and is forced to land. June initially believes that Ippei didn't fill the tank, but upon inspection, they discover a floating globule attached to the plane. Later, they are riding in a car with the globby creature, I assume to take it to a scientist, when their car suddenly runs out of gas, and the creature oozes out of the box and that they put it in and inflates like a balloon. And June wonders if the more energy it feeds on, does it actually grow in size? Well, it turns out that's true, because as the creature absorbed enough to not just be considerably bigger than it was originally, but it's strong enough to lift June's car into the air as it continues to inflate. Cops try to shoot the inflated creature, but which is soon dubbed Balloonga, but it seemingly absorbs the power of the bullet and spits it back out as if it does not even seem as though the bullet's been used. So Balloonga simply hovers over Tokyo And while not really doing much of anything at the moment except just float there, the army does plan to attack with jets and missiles, but they have no effect. Worse, Balloonga is getting bigger as it absorbs power from everything around it. It's positioned itself above the heart of Tokyo and leeching off the immense power of the city. It's pretty much doing two fairly nasty things. It's keeping the people of the city in constant blackout, which also affects hospitals from running properly, and is pretty much unstoppable as every attempt with conventional weapons proves futile. Jun and Yuriko seek out Dr. Naru, who happened to be at the crash site holding a balloon that Jun and Yuriko spotted just before Balloonga leached the fuel from Jun's plane. Dr. Naru suggests a rocket be fired out into orbit from the UN satellites above Earth that will basically create a nuclear blast that will appear like a second sun. And it will pretty much just lure Balloonga into space to suck power from it. Then the idea is Balloonga will realize that's the actual source of power it wants to feed and will seek a star to basically merge with to live basically forever. But the third and final like of this episode, and my favorite thing about Balloonga, is the fact that there's really no easy way to defeat this creature. All the other creatures thus far in the series has had some sort of supernatural, superstitious, or traditional way to defeat it. Balloonga does not have typical weaknesses. It seeks power sources to feed from. It doesn't just feed from ambient power. It feeds from kinetic power too. So so those bullets that the cops fired at it leached the power from the kinetic energy of the bullet slicing through the air. It's a parasite with no actual weakness or at least no earthly weakness of any kind. It latches onto that power source and it just feeds on it until it eats it all up and moves on. Without the idea to explode a nuke in space to attempt to lure it away, Balloonga would have basically fed on Earth until the planet and all life on it died slowly and painfully. It's a dark episode in that regard. And on top of that, Naru is the father of the astronaut who died at the beginning of the episode. He's the father of Balloonga's first victim. So, he sees it as both a creature of God come to wipe out Earth because he's so lost in his own grief, but it's also a biological creature that's just abiding by its feeding habits. It got stuck on the rocket ship that was headed back to a planet, and it just ate what was available there. And the point is that I like that Ultra Q went all the way to a logical conclusion that it's possible that someday we might come across something that can't be reasoned with, can't be shot out of the sky, can't be communicated with, or any of that stuff, and that we'll be woefully underprepared for it, and it would signal our impending death, and we were never going to be able to stop it no matter what we tried. In fact, we might, every time we try something, make it worse. It's an episode like this that really leans into sci-fi concepts pretty heavily, and makes the series that much more interesting. That wraps up this week's Monster Mondays. You can catch new episodes of Monster Mondays each Monday afternoon at filmseizure.com. Don't forget to follow Film Seizure at Facebook, Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky. You can also subscribe to Film Seizure to get both the Film Seizure podcast and Monster Mondays at your favorite podcast providers, as well as YouTube. You can also check out my website, bmovieenema.com, to read new articles every Friday morning. Next time, we are going to be invited to re-enter the Night Gallery. So until next week, stay spooky.